Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl, and as you can see, I'm not at home. I'm in a hotel room. I'm actually also in Canada right now, just on the opposite side of things from Toronto. I'm over in Vancouver, which will play a little part into what we're talking about today. However, we are diving into our final predictions in this pre-Cannes lineup that we've been doing. We've done picture, we've done acting, we've done crafts, text, but now we have 3 more specialized categories to dive into.
This is my favorite type of video to do because these are the films that a lot of people don't talk about, a lot of people don't know anything about, and we get to dive in. It's going to be so much fun. But before we get into that, we always talk about what has changed in the Oscar race because every week things are changing. You might say, it's too early in the season to be talking Oscars. No, things are developing. We are learning right now. And the first thing that we're learning about is Challengers is officially out in theaters, and people seem to love it.
We got some test screening for a big movie coming out very late into this season, being Gladiator 2. CinemaCon said good things, and then this test screening backed that up by saying it's pretty amazing.
We know at this point to be a little bit dubious about
Yes,
test screenings.
we do.
You know, over and over and over, test screenings burn us. So I'm not going to go all out with this and be like, oh my God, Gladiator 2, it's doing it again. It's doing it again. It's going to come for best. No, I'm not going to do that. That's ridiculous. Don't do it, especially because we already have 2 sequels in Best Picture.
And before we dive into our predictions today, if you are new here, we answer your questions on each and every episode. Just drop them down below. We're going to be answering some of your questions from the last episode at the end of this one, so stick around. And if you are new here, you're a returning viewer, welcome back in. You know, that subscription, that like, it helps us grow. We're almost to 1,000. We're so close. We'd love to hit it here soon, so your help would help us get there.
So let's talk Best International Feature. We have the Cannes lineup now. That is always our biggest indicator of what is going to be nominated. Oftentimes, we see 3 out of 5 of the eventual nominees be selected at the Cannes Film Festival in competition. And so that's a little bit how my lineup is looking now. Maybe a little bit different than that. I have 4 Cannes films here, but at number 1, I have Parthenope. This is an Italian film from director Paolo Sorrentino, who previously won the Oscar for Best International Feature. And if there is a big international breakout this year, this could be it. Although I do expect that to be a British film this year. Plot description of Parthenope is incredibly vague. It speaks about a woman going through her life and living in the city of Naples, and it doesn't tell us much more about it than that. So it really depends on the reception this gets at Cannes, whether this picks up an award, whether it's the Grand Prix or the Director Prize. But right now, I would say this is the safest film for a nomination. You know Italy's going to select it, and you know it will very likely get a nomination. So this is the only one I feel confident to say is a lock for a nomination, and that means it's probably most likely for a win right now. And that's not to say that I don't think they'll be good. They're more just films that I'm not sure if the selection committees of their countries are going to put them through. So the first one is The Girl with the Needle. This is either going to be selected by Denmark or Sweden, one of the two. I don't think they'll both fuck it up and not pick it. One of those guys are going to go with it. And this is also in the Cannes competition. It is a period drama set in the early 20th century, and it follows a factory worker who ends up being tied to a serial killer. And it has this very pressing subject matter because the way that the serial killer kills is quite relevant, I would say, in the world today. I won't say much more about it than that. And after that, there is an animated film, The Most Precious of Cargoes. It is a French film directed by Michel Hazanavicius, who did The Artist, Best Picture winner back in 2011. And this is the first animated film in Cannes competition since 2008. And the last time an animated film was in Cannes competition, it was nominated for Best International Feature, that being Waltz with Bashir. And this is a Holocaust film about a baby thrown from the train to Auschwitz who is then raised by a Polish family. So it sounds like a very emotionally powerful film that has something to say, and getting that double nomination between animated and international could be a big, big bonus for this. At number 4, I have the film All We Imagine as Light from India. This is also in Cannes competition, and it's the first Indian film selected at the Cannes competition in 30 years. And this director, Payal Kapadia, she makes very artful, abstract films that are beautiful and that are going to be a big hit with critics. We can be certain about that. This is going to be a movie that critics ride for this year. Now, one thing I will say, just a little disclaimer, I just talked with Arno, our international feature expert, and what he was saying is, Matt, you better not have All We Imagine is Light in your top 5. And I said, why not, Arno? It sounds like it's going to be a big sensation. It looks like it's going to be a prize winner at Cannes. And he said, it's because if there's one thing you can count on, is that India is going to fuck up their selection. Think about RRR. Think about all the times in the past. The last time that they submitted a film to Cannes, that they had a movie in Cannes, they did not select that movie. And so time and time again, India does not make the right choice when it comes to the Oscars. And so he was saying, don't include this because they're going to fuck it up again. And I'm going to say, screw you, Arno. I'm including it anyways. This is my number 4, and I feel good about it.
I think that's a very fair way to go about it, because we've seen years in the past where we try to predict what movie's going to be snubbed from the submission, and then they just get submitted anyway. So I'm always in support of predict as if it's going to be submitted, and then if it's not submitted, then you back off. But one thing a lot of people always talk about in the international feature category is, what's your breakdown between European and everywhere else? I see here you currently have 3-1, so you're going 4-1 or 3-2?
Yeah.
Oh, 3-2. Let's see it.
3-2, because my last one in my lineup is The Wave. This is a film from Chile. It is directed by Sebastian Lelio. He previously won the prize for Best International Feature for his film A Fantastic Woman. And this is a likely Venice competition title, and it is described as a musical which is set during the 2018 protests for feminism in Chile. So it's a feminist musical fantasy drama, which sounds really interesting to me. And again, this also depends on Chile not fucking it up like they did last year with El Conde, although El Conde probably would not have gotten the nomination. This also depends, if this actually goes to Venice. If this is not at Venice, then I'm much less confident in it, and I would take it out of my lineup. And I'd probably replace it with something like I'm Still Here. And this is a likely Venice title as well. It was heavily rumored to be a Cannes title, but apparently at the very last minute, Venice got it instead. And it's not clear what this film is about yet, but Walter Salles is a legendary filmmaker. He has been nominated in Best International Feature many times in the past for films like Central Station. The Motorcycle Diaries is an Oscar-winning film for Best Song that he directed as well. So he is always a good bet, and that's why he's just hanging right on the outside of my list. And of course, number 7, the only film from this list I've seen so far is Evil Does Not Exist from Japan. This played last year's Venice competition. It is Ryosuke Hamaguchi's film, and the question is, does Japan pick it? Because Japan, they don't often reselect filmmakers who have been submitted in the past. And because Drive My Car happened just a few years ago, the question is, will Japan double dip? Will they go with the next Hamaguchi film? It's very easy to say, yes, they will, but the history does not show that they do that.
I would say my biggest question for you so far is, at least looking at this list here, none of these movies really sound like easy watches per se, and I feel like this category has had at least one nominee in the recent years. I mean, we had Perfect Days last year, the year before, maybe it's a little bit of a stretch, but Argentina 1985 kind of feels like an easy watch, and then you can go to some years prior, and while it's not always overtly obvious that it's like a feel-good or a populist type film, there always seems to be at least one in the conversation that at the end of the day does slide its way in.
So, well, the one thing I'd say is last year it wouldn't be Perfect Days, it would be Society of the Snow. That was like the
that was the populist, yeah, but Perfect Days is like a fun watch.
Is it though? I mean, it's like it's slow.
In like a way,
moving. It's a comfy film. It's a cozy film. Parthenope would probably be that one.
Okay.
Parthenope or The Wave. I'm Still Here might be that one where it's kind of just cozy. It's kind of a vibe. All We Imagine Is Light is also just going to be a vibe of a film. So, but Parthenope specifically, I'd say is the vibes movie this year.
Gotcha.
Which
cool.
is, it's Paolo Sorrentino's work is very fancy. It's very like opulent. It's got this beautiful music and like really cool cinematography. If you've seen The Great Beauty, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's the vibe movie, and that's what Parthenope is going to be too.
And then my other question is, at least recently, Netflix has seemed like they're pretty strong in this category. I know we're early in the year, maybe they haven't picked up something yet, but does Netflix have an international type contender? Because, I mean, we saw last year with Society of Snow, they had All Quiet, they had Hand of God, and I'm sure there's more that I'm just blanking on right now.
But something I just generally feel about Netflix overall is they're showing that they have no interest in Oscars anymore. They have a new film boss in. He does not give a shit. I just think that we can basically start writing off Netflix. Maybe it's a little bit hasty for me to say that, but I just get the sense that they are not going to be pursuing this type of thing. There's plenty to look out for. So if you're there saying, I have no idea what even is out there in the race, well, I just gave you 18 examples. So hopefully this gives you something to jump off of.
Matt gave you 18 examples in international. I don't have that many in animated feature because, gonna be honest, I know that you'll have some points to come out here shortly. Anime looks kind of weak sauce this year, and the movies I do have in have major negatives against them. So it's like, do I buy them? Do I drop them ahead of the curb? That's something I guess we'll talk about here a little bit. But one movie I do feel good about at the moment is The Wild Robot. I think it's going to have some very impressive animation, something that we know this branch does like, as well as it has the funding from a giant studio to campaign it throughout the awards season. Even if it doesn't win, I think it's the safest film amongst all of our anime feature nominees to get a nomination. That's when we start to have some questions, because the last few years, Disney has shat the bed in this category. Even when it has a film that gets into the category, it does fine. Like, Encanto did win, but Encanto felt very underwhelming that year. Like, it didn't feel like it had the sauce, even though it ultimately did at the end of the day. So I do have Moana 2 in at the moment. I know there's a lot of red flags against this movie, but again, this is all hearsay, all this. You guys believe me on this. I was told by someone in the company they believe in this movie. Disney's very strong about this film. This was back in December. They told me that Disney was planning to move this to theatrical. About a month and a half later, it got moved to theatrical. So I'm buying into what they were telling me, since what they told me so far has come true. They said this music is almost as good, if not better, from the first one. The animation is stunning, and Disney's very positive on this film overall. They believe that's going to be a hit and one that this company desperately needs. Again, could be buying into the bait way too much, but what I've been told so far has rang true, so I have no reason to doubt everything else I've been told.
Well, the thing here, though, is, are they confident in terms of critical response, or are they confident in terms of financials and box office? Because those are different things. And we've seen repeatedly that their big films, especially sequels, think back to Frozen 2, that was a smash hit. But it did not do well with critics. And the track record for Disney sequels is shit. It's bad, bad, bad. And so no matter what, I am going to be very hesitant on this one because, again, it was developed for streaming. I'm sure the music will be good. I'll predict it for a song nomination or a win. I'm not going to predict it for an animated feature nomination.
It's one where as soon as we have more contenders, maybe I'll drop it down a little bit more. But at this moment, this far in advance, I feel good about it, because I don't feel great about Inside Out 2. I think if Disney Pixar is going to have a fumble this year, could be more of this movie in terms of critical reception. I know that Monsters University found their way in, but we saw recently Lightyear missed out, Finding Dory missed out. Incredibles 2 got in. It was probably the runner-up. So maybe Inside Out 2 could pull that same thing here. I know there was a critic-type preview for it where they saw about 30, 40 minutes, and they said it was really good, but they said the same thing about Lightyear 2, and see how that turned out. So it's one of those where I think it could coast by. I think back to Elemental last year. Was that ever in contention to win? No. Was it in contention for a nomination all year long? Yes. And I think that's Inside Out 2's type trajectory, barring it being equal or as great as the first one.
I'm just a little confused why you're so hesitant on both of these Disney movies, and yet they're number 2 and number 3. Because if you're this unconfident in these two, I would say there's like quite a few other ones that are destined to be better and should probably be a little bit higher.
it's just something that I need to see to believe for international titles, because year in, year out, there's always these big buzzy films where they're at Cannes, they're at Venice, they're at other film festivals that, oh, they're going to be in this category, and they ultimately fall flat on their face. We'll get into some of those here in a little bit, but the next one I want to talk about is the new Lord of the Rings film, where I know what you're gonna say. You've heard it's great. Same thing I've heard about Moana too. My big drawback is going to be the animation style, which I know we've seen. The Academy is becoming more international, becoming more receptive to anime and more different types of animation. But they're still, just like the other international films. This is not an international film, but the other international films, they're still reluctant unless it's great. And I don't think this film's not going to be great. It's just how great, because it also plays into a part of like, oh, it's Lord of the Rings, but it's not actors, it's animated. I know that didn't play a part for Spider-Verse. That's why I still have it getting in. And it's one of those where like once a trailer comes out, once it's seen at a film fest or just comes out theatrically, it will shoot right up number 2, maybe even number 1. But at this point, I have more hesitance with this film than I do with Inside Out 2 or Moana 2.
You're underselling it. An anime just won last year.
It did.
They just gave it to an anime. So I guess I could see your hesitance in that it's not just an anime, it's an anime action movie, and it's not just an anime action, it's also Lord of the Rings. But I think that's a bonus because it's instant brand recognition.
It is instant brand recognition, but the reason why Boy and the Heron was so successful was the filmmaker attached. And then my question back here would be, is the filmmaker of Lord of the Rings, at least what has been his track record here with domestic audiences so far? It's been more with like Ghost in the Shell. It's been more with, that's basically all I'm seeing here that kind of correlates with a domestic audience. Not saying his work hasn't been great or been noticeable in other geographical regions, but Boy and the Heron very much was a success because of the filmmaker.
But think less of the director here and think more of the brand itself, the franchise, right? Like, we're not thinking as much about the directors of Spider-Verse as we're thinking of Spider-Man and, of course, Lord Miller.
Yeah, and I guess to go back to Lord and Miller and Spider-Verse, I think they were the in part directors in that film that gave people the okay, the hype to get behind them. It's like, oh my gosh, it's the guys that we love from this product. Now they're involved with this one. Let's hop on it. And the movie came out and it was phenomenal. But I know before the movie came out, some people were having it at number 1, but a lot of people were a little bit more hesitant. Incredibles 2 came out to rave reviews, to critical acclaim, to box office appeal, and then ultimately at the end of the day ended up losing. So that's the same thing here, where like I have it in. It's not like I have it like number 10 or something. It's just I just have more reservations about it overall than the films I have above it. But one film I don't really have a lot of reservations about, besides just is it coming out this year, is the new Wallace and Gromit film. These films always find their way into our lineup. And if it's coming, I think it's pretty easy to slot ourselves into a 5th slot. But if it's not coming out this year, then obviously it would get yoinked from my top 5.
Well, they always make it into our lineup, except for Chicken Run and Early Man, the 2 Aardman films that flopped and did not get nominations.
I'm talking more specifically about Wallace and Gromit themselves.
Well, but they've only had one film that's been nominated, and it won.
I thought they
that
had
was The
2.
Curse of the Were-Rabbit. They had 3 short films, all of which were nominated, 2 of which won. So Wallace and Gromit has 3 Oscars, but only 1 feature film till now.
Gotcha.
So there's not much of a track record, and if Aardman's last film is anything to go by, I might not be the most confident in this film.
That's very fair. Chicken Run did bite me in the butt last year, one of my biggest L's, because I had that in all year long. Yeah, this is my 5 at the moment. Like I said at the top, not overtly confident about it. Not like last year where just pulling up what I had then, my 5 was Spider-Verse, How Do You Live, Elemental, TMNT, and Wish as my 5. So still 3 out of 5 then. I feel confident of at least 3 out of 5 here. Just which 3 is another question. Talked about an international feature. Netflix, do they have anything animated feature as a category they seem to do very well in? Due to some researching, I know that some talk was about Wallace and Gromit going to Netflix, but there's also some talk it could be straight to TV, and if so, would make it ineligible here, which means I have to look a little bit lower in my category, and this brings me to 2 films that you actually suggested. So I'm going to hand it over to you to talk about my number 6 and 7.
Well, Dylan, my boy, you said something very silly earlier, which is you said that every year we look at these Cannes animated films, these foreign animated films, and we think, oh, maybe they could happen, and they don't, but they do. Robot Dreams happened last year. We can't forget about Robot Dreams. So there's 3 films I want to mention that are playing at Cannes and the Annecy Film Festival, which is the big animated film festival in France. And these movies look delicious to me. The first one being The Most Precious of Cargoes. Like I mentioned earlier, this is the one that I think is going to be international and animated nominated. It is the first animated film in Cannes competition in 16 years, since 2008. So yeah, just don't underestimate these foreign indie contenders again after Robot Dreams. And then there's also Sauvage. Sauvage is Claude Barris's new film. He previously directed My Life as a Zucchini, which is another one of those foreign animated films that ends up getting a nomination. But the one that I think is possibly a win contender that you don't have here is Memoir of a Snail. This is an Australian film. It is being directed by Adam Elliott, who previously did the film Mary and Max, which is one of the most beautiful, heart-wrenching animated films I've ever seen. He's also an Oscar winner for his short film Harvey Crumpet, and everything I've heard about Memoir of a Snail is that it is not just one of the best animated films of the year, it's one of the best films of the year. And apparently it was so good that it caused a full-on war between Cannes and the Annecy Film Festival. And ultimately, Annecy ended up getting the world premiere, but apparently Cannes is absolutely pissed about that. So big buzz around Memoir of a Snail. I think this is genuinely top 3, might end up being number 1.
That is very fair. I'll throw it into my top 10 here, and I know you're going to say that's too low. I'll wait for the premiere, which will happen very soon, to possibly push it up a little bit. The only other film I really want to talk about, and I don't think this will be nominated, but I think it's going to follow in the trajectory of Illumination, what they do every year. They hit Globe, they hit PGA, they don't get the Oscar nomination, though, and Despicable Me 4 into that category to follow in the footsteps of Rise of Gru. And I know some people out there may be like, oh, where's Piece by Piece, the Pharrell doc? I think you answered right there. It's the Pharrell doc that's also Lego. 2 things that this branch doesn't typically go for. So, yeah, I'm not going to put that in my 10 unless it gets, like, every precursor. And even then, I'm going to be like, is this really going to get nominated? You may see in my top 10, I haven't actually watched any of these movies, so we have no anime contenders to come out so far. But Matt, you've watched a few documentaries in the last few weeks, so do any of them pop up in your documentary lineup?
Well, funny you say that. Currently in Toronto, the Hot Docs Film Festival is going on, and I just saw a bunch of films. I saw 8 films total over the past few days, so I have a little bit more of a hint of what this category is. And for reference, the Hot Docs Film Festival in previous years, back in 2019, they screened 4 out of 5 of the nominees. Last year, they only had 2 out of 5. So less good last year, but it's certain that some of the things I saw will be nominated. So let's dive right in. And I can say it, I just saw the film. I've been saying it for a few weeks now. I believe that Daughters will be our Oscar winner. Now, I will say, last year when I saw 20 Days in Mariupol at the Hot Docs Film Festival, I instantly went, there is no chance anything else wins. This is the sweeper. This wins. This is absolutely the film that takes it. Seeing Daughters this year, I didn't feel exactly the same. I feel like it's likely to win, but I don't feel the same, like, emphatic, oh my God, nothing else can take it. But this film did win some key prizes at the Sundance Film Festival, taking the overall audience award for the entire fest. It is a film about a daddy-daughter dance that takes place in the prison system. Funny enough, Dylan, the organization that this film is about, is from Richmond, Virginia.
Nice.
So, little hometown thing here. Now, I didn't love the film. It's very beautifully shot. I felt like it was a bit of a short film stretched to a feature, but the audience response definitely told the whole story, which is the entire audience was sniffling through the entire movie. Like, people were crying throughout. They were in pieces throughout the entire movie, and like the Q&A, people were crying as they were asking questions. It was wild. So it's this emotion to it. And also, if we are saying that Sing Sing is going to be one of the big winners of this year, then potentially having a documentary film that is this emotional and connected to prison reform, connected to giving these inmates something to do that gives them new purpose in life, maybe that could be a great argument to boost this to a win as well.
I am definitely interested to see if your bold prediction early on continues for a third, fourth straight year in documentary feature?
Probably, because Navalny and Summer of Soul were both pretty early picks too.
Let's say Daughters doesn't connect, it's not our winner. What could be the potential fill-in here?
So the next film to talk about is the Netflix movie. I talked about it in international feature as well. It's I Lin. This is the World of Warcraft movie. It is emotionally powerful. Does very well with audiences. It also picked up some audience prizes at Sundance. Now, I will say being set inside World of Warcraft could be a negative. Some people might not see it as enough of a documentary, but I think the reception we're seeing for it so far is showing that the proof is in the pudding. People are going to love this movie, and it's going to get a nomination. Anyways, the next film is Union. Pretty biased about this one because the director was previously my employer and is a good friend. So I'm just hyped that I can put this up here. Union played at Sundance. It won one of the prizes at Sundance. And this one follows the formation of the Amazon labor union in Staten Island, following Chris Smalls as he tries to put together this, as he tries to organize a union and take on the big dog of Amazon and Jeff Bezos. And gotta say, a film about collective bargaining is going to play very, very well to Hollywood this year. There's also Porcelain War. I just got out of this one a few hours ago. This is a Ukrainian war film, and it's about the relationship between people's everyday lives, who they were before the war and who they are now. And it's specifically looking at soldiers in Ukraine who are also artists, and looking at how they build these pieces and they still connect with their art even during the war. And so it's contrasting this footage of like creating these beautiful things with the destruction around them. And it's also talking about how the way that people will try to kill a country is by killing its culture. And so it's really stating that the Ukrainian people and their culture will continue to persevere and will survive. So, and then the last one in my top 5 is Sugarcane. This is another Sundance movie. National Geographic bought it, which they are a very good campaigner. We saw that last year with Bobby Wine. And this one tells the story of residential schools in Canada, which were places where Indigenous people were taken to have their culture erased, essentially. Very big deal in Canada. It's something that has not really been reckoned with in the United States yet. So I'm going to be interested to see what the reception of this documentary is, because it is very much a Canadian story, which could put American voters at a bit of a distance from it. So that's my top 5. I'm going to say right now, at least 2, likely 3 of these movies will be nominated. I'm going to say no way 4 will be nominated, but 2 to 3, I'm leaning to 3, are going to be in the top 5. So for now, if you're just feeling unsafe with what your doc lineup is, just put this top 5. Like, seriously, 3 of these will be nominated.
So you say 3. What would be the other 2 then? What's your next in line?
Well, that's the thing, is that the other 2 are films that I don't have on my radar at all. I don't think anything else on my list is going to be nominated. My top 5 is rock solid right now. So, like, the documentary category fucks with us every year, though, because last year they put in To Kill a Tiger, they put in Bobby Wine, 2 films that were kind of out of nowhere. And so those ones I would not have had on my list this time last year. The other 3 I would have had on my list this time last year. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it at this point. I think that whatever else gets nominated will not be on my radar yet.
As you can see, the rest of Matt's, on the horizon type documentary contenders over here. Let's dive into our final segment of the show, the questions from all of you out there. And these first 2 are actually for you, Matt, because if you don't know out there, and maybe you're not subscribed, maybe this is your first time here, welcome in. Matt's going to Cannes, so he has some Cannes-based questions here. The first one is, are you going to do like the vlogs like you did for TIFF last year?
Good question, Pranks and Cats. No, I can't, because the Cannes Film Festival very strictly prohibits recording on premises. So anytime I'm at Cannes, anytime I'm in the general area where the festival takes place, the Palais du Festival, I will not be able to film. They are very, very strict on it. You aren't even allowed to take selfies in that area. So I will be releasing film reviews, but those will be filmed back at my Airbnb. I will be doing those separately from the festival. So unfortunately, I can't do vlog content and give you the full festival experience like I did with TIFF. Very sad, but I'll do my best to fill you in on all the films that are there anyways.
And the second question is kind of one you already answered earlier, but sight unseen, what film do you think is going to take the palm?
So, sight unseen, what I think is going to take the palm is Andrea Arnold's Bird. Now, Josephine DeMarco is asking between Paolo Sorrentino's Parthenope and Jia Zhangqi's Caught by the Tides, which one's more likely? So, Parthenope, I've heard good things about. And, I mean, you saw earlier, it's my international contender, my winner at this point. I think it's a stronger film for the palm for sure, but Caught by the Tides has a little bit of a rotten buzz around it, so very sad to say, because I do like Ja's films, but Caught by the Tides, it was actually rumored that Cannes did not want the film and that it was pretty divisive with the selection committee, so people thought it was going to go to Venice because Cannes was not very hot on it, but they took it for competition anyways. So the next question is from Flynn Nolan. It's a little bit less of a question, but basically Flynn is just saying, I could imagine that Gaga could write a song for Joker that's kind of fitting the style of the film, kind of along the lines of her work in jazz and Broadway and more classical sound with Tony Bennett. So the question is, if a song is a little bit more low-key.
I think so. I think the biggest thing for this film, if there is an original song, as long as it's in the movie, unless the song is just awful, which I doubt a Lady Gaga written song, a Lady Gaga sung song would be that awful, I feel like it gets a nomination. Now, if it's a credit song, I think there's a different question there. But again, we're both predicting Joker to be at least top 5 contenders. I know you're a little bit higher than me. And if the film's that strong, a credit song, even at that point, would be strong enough to get into the lineup, regardless of what type of genre it is or what type of feel it is. So I'm of the camp where I said in our last episode, where if Gaga has a song, it's going to be my front runner. And now if Gaga doesn't have a song, then obviously I don't even have it in my top 5 at all. And then our last question, a friend of the show, he's been on before, Akshet, saying that can't not justify Gladiator in production design because Napoleon got one last year, which I think is very fair. It's all about those visual aesthetic extensions, something Ridley Scott loves to do. Just the big thing, and I know I'll let you talk about this in a second, is how many of those can we have this year? Dune is already doing that. Joker will probably do that to an extent. And I'm sure there's other movies that are come out, and it's just, do we have room for all of them? The thing about Napoleon last year was, due to the lack of other stuff, as well as how grand it was, playing into like a Victorian era, it rose to the occasion. And Gladiator is in an era that could very much help it, but also goes to just the overall competition in the category as well.
Mm-hmm. Gladiator 2, I think, is just a little bit stronger than Napoleon. I think it could do the same nominations, give or take like 1 or 2, maybe an acting nomination for Denzel. So production design, I'm definitely like tracking Gladiator 2 for that one. Not huge on it as a contender, but definitely for techs. Even if it's a bad movie, tech nominations.
Tech nominations counted in, but that's going to bring us to the end of this episode. And honestly, this is probably be our last predictions for about a month because, as I mentioned before, Matt's going to be at Cannes giving you the rundown of all the films over there.
Leaving to Europe tomorrow, so we're going to be on separate time zones and everything. Yeah, I'll be in Europe by the time this video's out. So, I'm we're not going to be doing predictions for a little bit. We're going to let Cannes come and go, and then we're going to weigh back in. So, look out for that, and we'll be back after the Cannes Film Festival. But until then, my name's Matt.
My name is Dyl, and this is Fantasy Filmball.